Hello, everyone. My name is Assemblywoman Luz Rivas, and I represent the Northeast San Fernando Valley in the State Assembly. I want to welcome all of you to El Centro de Amistad's virtual Tools to Thrive Mental Health Conference. I want to start off by thanking El Centro de Amistad for the incredible work that they have done in my district for over 4 decades to connect children, adults, and families in the San Fernando Valley to the mental health services that they need. I also want to thank all of you for the work you do as mental health professionals to help our fellow Californians get access to care and to take care of their mental health. As all of you know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and the theme of this conference, Tools to Thrive, which provides information, tips, and tools that attendants can use to improve their mental health. Because of organizations like El Centro de Amistad, we are breaking through the stigmas associated with improving and even discussing mental health with others. I remember years ago where this subject area was still very taboo and we could not discuss our mental health care needs. But coping tools like self-care and seeking out therapy are becoming more commonplace, as they should be. And with the pandemic decreasing our social interactions, it's even more important that we take care good of ourselves. Depression, anxiety, and other mental health illnesses are daily and real struggles for so many people. And I thank you for the work that you do to help people get care for their mental health. That's why I'm so glad that El Centro de Amistad is holding this conference to provide support for all of you as well. I can only imagine how difficult your jobs can be because of the nature of the work. So please don't forget to take care of yourselves too. Your mental health and wellness is just as important as the patients or clients that you serve every day. Because how can you help others when you aren't taking care of yourselves, right? So thank you so much for being here today. And thank you again to El Centro de Amistad for hosting this conference. I hope you all enjoy it. Thank you.
Hey, good morning. I'm sorry, I think I was on mute. In honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, welcome to the 2021 Tools to Thrive Mental Health Conference hosted by El Centro de Amistad. Thank you to our sponsors, the California Community Center, the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health, the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services, SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration Program, and Whole Foods. And thank you to the participants and presenters for joining us for this special event. My name is Tanya Fowler-Delgato, and I am the agency's Associate Director. I've been a licensed and marriage, family, and therapist for 18 years, and I've worked at El Centro de Amistad for 17 years. My focus is on making mental health services more accessible to marginalized communities and to destigmatize mental health. At El Centro de Amistad, we provide a comprehensive range of culturally competent and sensitive mental health and social services for our consumers aged birth to 64 years of age in the greater San Fernando Valley, the Los Angeles County, and the surrounding communities. El Centro de Amistad provides services to underserved populations, primarily focusing on Latinx consumers. 70% of our consumers are Latinx. We provide individual, family, and group therapy, parenting classes, counseling, medication support, case management, employment services, assessments for children who have been removed from their homes, and for children to be placed in relative home caregivers' homes, family preservation services, mental health consultation and training for infants and early childhood, free legal services, and peer support. The staff at El Centro de Amistad are passionate individuals that dedicate their time and expertise to serving at-risk individuals and families impacted with mental health issues. As we navigate through these trying times, El Centro de Amistad is committed to serving the community. Thus, we have developed our first ever virtual conference that you will be attending today to address issues that impact so many of our consumers. Today, our presenters will be speaking about childhood trauma, adolescent suicidality, and bipolar disorder. Our first presenter, Alejandra Trujillo, is a licensed marriage and family therapist and infant, child, and trauma specialist. Alejandra was born and raised in Mexico City. She studied at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico and earned her license as a psychologist in 2004 in Mexico. For her dissertation, she developed a manualized treatment to help children suffering from depression. Ms. Trujillo worked as a school psychologist and in private practice in Mexico, focusing on helping adults and children struggling with depression, anxiety, chronic stress, and trauma. In 2008, she moved to the United States and attended graduate school at the California State University, Northridge. She graduated in 2011 with a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. Alejandra is passionate about helping young children, families, and adults. She has extensive experience and training in evidence-based practice. She currently works as a clinical supervisor, consultant, and trainer, and is in private practice. Please provide a warm welcome to Alejandra Trujillo as she presents on the topic of enhancing children's capacity from healing from trauma, tools to promote change. Welcome, Alejandra.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me over and inviting me to participate in today's event. I feel very honored. So let's begin this presentation with a deep breath. I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath, but when you let the air out, make sure it comes out very slowly, nice and slowly. Let's do it together. Very slowly. We're trying to come down from either the red zone to activated, maybe the blue zone where you are a little numb, not really engaged. Let's go back to the green zone all together. Let's take a deep breath and let's get it out. Good. Now let's get all together grounded. Plant your feet on the floor. Make sure that both feet are planted on the floor. Grab your hands, cross them this way. You're kind of going to give a little hug. We call this the butterfly hug. We're going to go left, right, left, right. Do it with me. Good. Take a deep breath. Let it out. The butterfly hug helps us feel grounded and comes down the amygdala, the part of your brain that is in charge of your emotions. Now, let's get activated and ready to rock and roll this event. The next exercise we're going to do is something that comes from yoga. You do not need to stand up, but it helps us become activated and comes down also the amygdala. So we're going to raise our hands as we inhale, and then we're going to exhale. And let's do it one more time. And one more time. There's no way to get these wrong. Okay, let's begin. I'm going to share my screen here with everyone. Let me share my screen. Give me 1 second. Cool stuff about technology. Here we go. Okay, here we go. I think now you can see. Can you see my PowerPoint? I hope so. Okay. So today I'm going to be talking. Can you see my PowerPoint, team? No. Okay. Let me see. Beth, can you help me show my PowerPoint. There you go. Thank you so much. Here we go. Okay. So today I'm going to be talking about enhancing children's capacity for healing from trauma. I'm going to focus specifically on some tools to promote change. Okay. So after we've done an assessment, meeting families, meeting children, there's three main phases in trauma treatment. First phase, stabilization phase. It's all about regulation, calming down the nervous system, which has been sensitized to trauma. Most of the children that we work with do not come with one single incident. They come with a long history of trauma. The next phase is the working phase. We call it reprocessing. We reprocess the traumatic event. And the last phase is closing phase, integration. We can use a metaphor to understand this, like the wound metaphor. If you have a wound, an open wound, a doctor is not going to come and try to sew you right away. They have to do a lot of care, pre-ops. They're going to clean the area. All that is stabilization phase. We're going to make sure that the heart, it's okay before we do any cleaning, any sewing, any repairs. And then we close it and we send them home. So it's very similar to the work that we do in psychotherapy. Today, I'm only going to be working on stabilization phase because those are the tools that are critical in doing a good reprocessing phase, in healing children from trauma. So what are those ingredients for stabilization phase? You probably know some of them. You've experienced them if you are a consumer of mental health services. And if you are someone that provides mental health services, you relate to this. One of the first ingredients for stabilization phase is psychoeducation. It's learning about trauma. Why is that I'm feeling this way? But one of the tools that I find the most useful is explaining triune brain. Triune brain is, in basic words, explaining how the brain works, the architecture of the brain. And I don't use complicated words. I like to use very simple words. Imagine that the brain is like a cake, a 3-layer cake. The first layer, it's called the reptilian brain. I have a little reptile here. It looks like a crocodile. So this guy is kind of right at the bottom of your brain. There's 3 layers. The first layer, reptilian brain, and this one is in charge of keeping you safe. If right now there was an earthquake, this guy will make you run outside. If you're going on a hike and you see something that resembles a snake, you jump, and this guy helps you escape from danger. Right now, if you're thirsty, my reptilian brain is saying, oh, you need water. So, salud, amigos. If this part of the brain is activated, it is really hard to continue focusing because he wants you safe. Right now, if you ate something, this part of the brain is in charge of that. If your heart is beating, you're breathing, that's his job, right in there. The next layer of the brain is a very important layer. It's called the mammalian brain. It's the second layer of the brain. And this one, it's a mammal, like a dog. If you have a dog, you can tell when dogs are happy, when they're excited, when they're sad, when they're scared. And when they ate la chancla and they were not supposed to eat la chancla, like your shoe, you can tell that they're embarrassed. So this is the amygdala, the part of the brain that is in charge of the emotions. That's the second layer of the brain. And the third layer of the brain is the thinking part. If any of these first 2 layers, the most primitive parts of the brain, it's also called the downstairs brain, and the thinking part is the thinking brain or the upstairs brain. If any of these 2 brains are activated, we can think. If any of these 2 guys are activated, we're only accessing 15% of our cortex, the thinking part of your brain, according to Dr. Bruce Perry. So very important that we focus on the first phase of treatment to calm down those 2 brains so we can actually process and move forward. So that's key in psychoeducation. Another ingredient for stabilization phase is regulation techniques. Relaxation is a part of it. It's not the only one. There's relaxation, imagery, grounding. I'll talk a little bit about it in the future. Somatic literacy. It's learning, basically, expanding your vocabulary for bodily sensations. Some moms tell me, oh, my kid goes from 0 to 100. There's actually things happening in between 0 to 100. So our jobs as therapists is helping children identify bodily sensations. I highly recommend a book called Listening to My Body by Gabi Garcia. It's in English, in Spanish, and you can look it up in YouTube, and there's someone reading it out loud. It's a beautiful book to start learning bodily sensations, naming them, so I can be more attuned to what's happening inside. Another ingredient for stabilization phase is affect education. Learning what feelings are, why do we need them, are they good, are they bad? No, the news is that they're not good or bad. Some are pleasant, some are unpleasant, but they all have a very important job. Today, I'm going to talk in increasing capacity for affect tolerance. If we don't work on this, we have a big risk of not helping client to reprocess events. Another ingredient for stabilization phase is cognitive coping. If some of you are mental health providers, you can recognize these 4 ingredients. They come from trauma focus, cognitive behavioral therapy, or these will be the ingredients that you get from a PWeb search when you're doing MAP. I'm going to focus on 3 other ones. Time orientation techniques. And my 20 years of practice, I find that time orientation techniques are critical in helping a wounded heart heal. I'm going to also talk about enhancing child's inner resources. This is probably my favorite part. And compartmentalization techniques. What is that? So I put it in, I bolded, as you can tell, you can see, I bolded the techniques, the ingredients that I'm going to be talking about. So let's take another deep breath before I start with one of these first ingredients. I'm going to take a deep breath, let out, just so we can transition to, in my opinion, one of the most important interventions in mental health. I use this intervention even during assessment. This intervention is called explaining the reason for treatment. If you've been my student, if you know child-parent psychotherapy, you already know that this is a hallmark intervention in helping children birth to 5 heal. If we're using this intervention with babies and birth to 5 clients, you bet it's going to be useful for any kind of client. Explaining the reason for treatment is basically name it to tame it. The developer of child-parent psychotherapy, Alicia Lieberman, has said, we therapists, we speak the unspeakable, and that's critical in the work we do. Very simple 3-piece formula. You experience A, and that is why you're feeling B. And so you're here so I can help you feel better. That's the formula. How does this translate to when we're talking to kids? I typically ask them, do you know why you're here? They raise their shoulder. They're like, I don't know. My mom wants me. The court wants me. I want to make sure that I name it, because if I don't name it, I won't tame it. I know you saw your dad hitting mom, and that's why you've been feeling sad, angry, can focus at school. This is where you plug in the feelings that they're coming with, the impairments that they're presenting with. So you are here so I or we as a team can help you feel better. I find this strategy very helpful. It does 3 things. 1, puts 1 and 2 together. I'm feeling this way because of what happened to me, not because I'm messed up, because I'm a bad kid, because I'm a problem, because kids already know that when they come to therapy, something is wrong with them. At least that's what they think. And so when you put 2 and 2 together, immediately some cognitive distortions start to fade. Oh, so doesn't mean that I'm bad? Oh, it's because what happened to me that I'm feeling this way? And the third message that you're sending, which I think it's very important, I can hold it. I will be the witness of your pain. We become therapists. We're in the helping profession because we like to jump and start trying to help. But I want I want you providers to not become a fixer. I want you to be first a witness and learn more about our clients while we give them those tools to be able to reprocess. Don't start fixing things. Let's wait. Let's get to know them, and let's name it to tame it. Now, let's go to the next ingredient that I think it's critical. Time orientation techniques. What are them? So what we know is that trauma gets stored in the body and in the most primitive parts of the brain. So the brain needs a lot of reminders that we are here in the present, right now. What day is today? I bet you anything that some of you, if you have trauma history, and especially trauma history that has not been processed, you might be looking at your computer. Wait, what day is today? Oh, yeah, Wednesday. I ask this question to parents, to children, to my adult clients, and most of them have a hard time remembering that today is May 12th, that today is a Wednesday, and that we're 2021. Bring a calendar. Make sure that children and you, if you're a consumer of mental health services, have a calendar. And through the day, not once a day, through the day, you remember what day is today. Maybe find a mantra that reminds you, I survived. I'm not there. I'm right here. Clinicians, ask your clients to mark the day. Ask them at the beginning and the end of the session, what day is today. Help them ground themselves to the present moment and share the message that the ugly stuff, the yucky stuff is in the past. Make sure you name it. One of my favorite interventions in time orientation techniques is grounding myself to the present moment. And we can do it if you get a chance to look into Seeking Safety Protocol. They have one whole chapter dedicated into grounding techniques. There's all kinds of grounding. One of my favorite is this one. Let's do it together. Right now, please find 5 objects that you can see where you are. I see a lamp. Say it out loud. I see a hat. I see a pair of tennis shoes. I see a space heater. And I see a yoga ball. Find 5 things you can see. Now find 4 things you can touch and go ahead and touch them. I have a pen, have different things that I can touch. Good. Let's find 3 things. I'm going to be really quiet for a moment. Let's find 3 things we can hear. Good. Let's find 2 things you can smell. If you always have your skin and maybe your clothing. I have a little bit of lotion with lavender. Feels good. Last one. 1 thing you can taste. Salud otra vez. Go ahead and get a little bit of water. All that is grounding. It reminds my brain that I'm here and not back then in the ugly stuff or in the future, right? Worrying about the things that could happen. Good. Something else that I love doing is if we are in the room, in the same room, I want to ask my clients, we're going to do something together. But if not, I'll ask them to find something that reminds them of the present moment. Look at your room. What is one object that reminds you that you are here and not there, back there when the domestic violence was happening, where the ugly stuff was happening, where the abuse, the sexual abuse, the rape was happening? What is one thing that can remind you? Sometimes it's a teddy bear. I like doing like a little stone and get Sharpies and put a mantra or a word that reminds me that I made it. I like doing bracelets, like friendship bracelets. And so hopefully that's something that you can do with your clients. But anything, any object that reminds you that you made it. I have a picture of my son, so I know that was in the past before he was even was born. If you're here today, if you're listening, whatever you're listening, you deserve a medal. So we can also give a medal, right? We can give a medal. It can be something that you draw with your clients. If we're here today, we survived 2020, and that's a hell of a big accomplishment. So give yourself some credit for that. The other piece of time orientation techniques that I want to talk with you today is the circles of control. You can Google this. There's lots and lots of, just Google circles of control. What is it? It's really focusing on the things that I can control. The inner circle means these are the things that I can control: my thoughts, my feelings, my behaviors, how much toilet paper I buy, if I use hand sanitizer or not, if I put my vaccine or not, to give you an example. There's a circle, right, out of my control, the one on the outside. I cannot control if someone puts or not or not a mask, if they're going to put the vaccine or not, but I can influence them. Just to give you an example, most of us and our children with and the families and anyone with trauma history, we focus a lot on the things that we cannot control. And we forget that if we focus here, we're going to be miserable. So help, if you're a mental health provider, help people to identify and fill these circles of control and fill them with words. What are the things that you can do to control? And one of the things that you can do right now is take a deep breath. If you're waking up at 5 in the morning, at 2 in the morning because you cannot sleep, is because this guy is activated. One, because of your trauma history. The other one, because of COVID-19, who is also still representing a threat, right? So take a deep breath and remind yourself that you're here, that you're safe, that in this moment, at least in this conversation, we're safe. Let's transition to another ingredient for this initial phase of treatment. We want to make sure that we increase affect tolerance. What is this? I love sharing something that I learned from Ana Gomez. Ana Gomez is one of our international trainers in EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. Wonderful tool, wonderful therapy approach for trauma. Ana Gomez says that feelings are visitors and no feeling stays forever. So feelings are not good or bad. Some of them are pleasant, some are not so pleasant, but they all have a very important job. Think of anger. It's your sense of justice. Some clients say, I don't want to be angry anymore. No, you do need anger. Anger helps you stand up for yourself. Without anger, you would never speak up. Fear is your alarm that helps you escape from danger. Same thing like anxiety. It's a normal feeling that helps you escape from danger. Even think of guilt. When I feel guilt is maybe because I did something wrong, a behavior that was wrong. So guilt is kind of our moral compass. All feelings are important. Sadness helps us slow down. We need to feel every feeling in order to heal, and that's what happens in the therapeutic room. But no feeling is permanent. People feel like they are their pain, and we need to make sure that we send the message. Remember, that pain is a feeling. It is not who you are. Most of my clients had found this year, especially, some of them had graduated, and they said that the most important tool that I gave them was when we sat down and we wrote down, I'm not my feelings, or these too shall pass. Google this story. It's a beautiful story. The bottom line of these too shall pass, Google it, these too shall pass. You can find this story on YouTube, many places. Bottom line of this beautiful story is that if you're looking for happiness, right, the secret of happiness is to remember that these two, TOO, shall pass. So if you're feeling in a lot of pain, it shall pass because no feeling is permanent. And if you're feeling happy, not to feel, oh God, this is going to end and feel pessimistic about it, to embrace it, to savor it with all your being. So increasing affect tolerance is important. Remember, if you learned something from it today, just remember, no feeling is permanent. Write it down. Write it down and put it somewhere where you can see it. I like having like little post-its, and I put them in places. As we transition to the next ingredient for stabilization phase, I want you to look at something beautiful in the room where you are. Look at something beautiful. I'm going to open the window. You can see a beautiful tree. The intentionality of looking at something beautiful comes down our brain, and it puts us again back in the green zone, and that's what we want. Strengthening clients' inner resources. This is probably one of my favorite techniques, and I do this with clients often. I don't know if you've seen totems. This is a totem pole. Native Americans believe that everyone is connected to a different animals that accompany them through life. Which ones do you have? Go inside and see if you can find 3 spirit animals that you have. Write them down. You can draw them. Like this looks like a deer, a dog, and a cat, and a chicken, I think. I'm going to show you mine. These are fun. I have a cheetah. Oh, I drew them differently. They represent they look like Matryoshka dolls, the nesting dolls, like the Russian dolls that come one inside of the other. It's another idea. Some kids like the totem. Some kids like the idea of the Russian dolls. Mine looks like a Russian doll, and I got the idea from Amazon. I think they sell this kind of. You Google Matryoshka or nesting animals, and I kind of copy them. So mine is for sure a cheetah because I love running. If you know me, if you've been my student, if you've been in my trainings in the past, I love running. So I have that inner spirit, inner strength in me. I love elephants. Elephants are smart. Elephants are caring. Elephants walk in herds and no one is left behind. And I truly believe about that you never leave the little one and you take care of the older one. So we're all together, and that's what elephants do. The other one that I've been focusing on these days is finding my inner peace. And pandas, my son loves Kung Fu Panda, so he's finding his chi and ideas to be more grounded. And I've noticed that when I'm grounded, I'm more present, ready to learn, more engaged. And I want to transmit that to the people that I work with, my clients, my students. Ana Gomez loves doing my team of companions. So you can have lots of companions right before you go into the reprocessing phase of treatment. Find your superhero. Kids like superheroes. If you were to ask my son, what's your inner superpower or your inner hero, he would say Spider-Man. Oh my goodness, that little boy loves Spider-Man. And if I could help him connect with that Spider-Man, he'll feel really strong inside. Maybe a wise figure. It can be a Buddha, it can be animals, it can be an angel. Some of our, as Tanya said, most of the population that we work with are Hispanic. Not all Hispanic are Catholic, but some of my clients love picturing the Virgencita de Guadalupe holding them, a mama bear. We can use attachment figures to help kids feel really strong. Now, let me give you a secret. There's a secret, it's not really a secret. If you evoke with all your senses, your spirit animals, evoke your spirit animals or a nurturing figure, a protective figure, a wise figure, a moment in which you felt strong, a moment where you were brave, patient, smart, joyful, powerful. This morning I needed like a lot of energy to be able to present with confidence. So I brought my spirit animals, and this is the secret. I brought them with all my senses, smell, what I hear, what I can feel, what I can see. And once the sensation was really strong, pleasant, if the feeling is pleasant, and two, it felt good in my body, you can add 10 to 12 taps. Write it down. 10 to 12 taps, a butterfly hug. This butterfly hug was invented it comes from the EMDR world, but it was actually, I think, invented by Dr. Nacho Herrero in Mexico. This is a butterfly hug. 10 to 12 taps. I call them with my kids back and forth games, gorilla, drums, happy feet. You can march. You can do a little bit of happy hands. You can learn more about this. I want to invite you to look into a book called Tapping In by Dr. Laurel Parnell. It's a book that was written for the general public. I got the audiobook, so she guides you through all these incredible tools. Tapping in resources and inner resources. It's part of the stabilization phase of EMDR, one of the most powerful protocols to help process traumatic events. So any person can learn about tapping, any mental health provider can learn about tapping, making good stuff feel stronger with a little bit of a butterfly hug. I hope I'm encouraging you to go get the book, get her training. You do not need to be an EMDR therapist. This book was written for the general public. So let's go into a circle of love. I love the circle of love. Imagine right now, and you can write it down, if you have a half circle or a full circle with people. If today you needed love, I'm feeling isolated, it's been over a year, I'm feeling lonely, get surrounded by the people you love. even people in heaven, even people that you don't know. Maybe you like Keanu Reeves on his movies. Maybe you like Beyonce. I have a client who brought Michelle Obama with all the racial stuff happening, the racism happening in America. She brought Dr. Lewis. She brought, when she needed like to feel strong, she brought Michelle Obama. She brought Beyonce. She brought all these people. And in mine, actually, I can get teary just thinking about my own circle of love. And the next step is to go one by one, close your eyes, go inside, hold their hands, so whatever feels appropriate, and let the love come back and forth. I can put in there my grandma. I'll move to my mom. I'll move to my sister. I'll move to my dog if I had one. If that's important to you, I'll move to my kid. I'll move to my husband. I'll go to my friend and connect with them. Imagination is powerful. Remember that images have an impact. This is important. Write it down. Images have a direct impact on our nervous system, our glands, and our nerves, and our muscles. So connect with that. Let me show you. Please do not take pictures of this. I'm gonna show you 2 examples of clients. This is a happy place. Kids don't like calm place. It's too boring. Teenagers, they say this is too boring. So my client created a happy place. It's a place she loves Christmas trees. So it's a beautiful place. And again, when I'm asking client to connect with this place, she's bringing the smells of s'mores. They're cooking s'mores here. This is her best friends. They're having a sleepover. They have dragons protecting this place. She can hear the water. She can smell the breeze. You can feel the breeze on her face. When we connect with these resources, again, if the motion feels pleasant, if the body feels pleasant, we add a butterfly hug. And so in moments of distress, you can connect with this. Yes, of course, any of these techniques really solve problems or solve trauma, but they start rewiring your brain to feel strong enough to bear the trauma processing. This is another example. Please do not take pictures of this. We have a dog. These are her spirit animals. A dog because she's brave, a butterfly because she loves the wind, an owl because they are very wise. A pig, I don't know if you know this, she told me that in the Bahamas, there's pigs in the ocean. So she connected with a pig because she likes the ocean. And pink, a turtle, because when she feels scared, she can go inside and get protected. A lion, because she protects her sister who has Asperger's syndrome and she's going to stand up to protect her. Violence is, anger is okay, violence is not. She's learned that. Octopus, because they're really smart. A bat, because she enjoys the night. And a roly-poly, because she loves the dirt. So I want to encourage you to find your spirit animals and help the people that you work with. It's a really fun technique tool. So to end, let's take one more deep breath as we're ending this presentation. One of the most important tools for anyone working with trauma, even when those nights when you cannot go to sleep, what would it be for you if you had a container? A container, this is like a chest, but a container that is strong enough and big enough to hold all the thoughts, all the worries, all the demons that come at night when you cannot go to sleep. Imagine what kind of material it would be. Make sure it has a two-way, so you can open and close, and only you have the magic to open it. Mine is a cave in Mexico. It's a giant cave, and it has a giant rock that I can move with my superpowers. Imagination is powerful. And whenever I have difficulties, I open the cave, put them there, and close it. 100% of my clients have said that after developing a container, putting things away, there's a sense of like, oh, this feels good. I wish we had a little extra time so I could create containers for all of you here. Think about it. Create your container out of that special material that no one can open. Now, kids are like super smart these days. They say their containers look like bolts, like the ones at casinos in Vegas, or a special cube in space protected by Thor with a giant hammer, and the cube sucks in things. And then clients have put fingerprint, voice recognition, eye retina. I could not come up with those things. So at the end of every session, on those nights when you cannot sleep, on those days that you need to focus and you cannot even write notes, come up with your container, put it in there, lock it, put it away. If it works, 10 to 12, no more than that, 10 to 12 taps. Because tapping in comes down the mammalian brain, and one, the part of your brain in charge of your emotions. And number two, it cements the skills. It rewires, literally, physically rewires the brain. Some clients have a difficulty coming up with imagination, for many reasons. Physicalize it. I like having this little box in my office. And at the end of session, I said, we're 5 minutes about to the end. We're ready to send me all the stuff that you don't want to take with you today. That's critical. Some of our clients don't ever want to come back to therapy because they take their demons with them. I want to bring them in here. Send me all the bad stuff. Put it here. I'm going to keep it safe. It's going to be here. As we finish this portion of my presentation, let's end with what day is today? Look at it. May 12, 2021. You're here. You're safe. You made it. Let's do a vagal hold. Put right hand on your heart, left hand on your stomach, and come down your nervous system so you come down to green. I'm going to show you one more. I'm going to cross my hands this way, and I'm going to massage. There's there's a bone here right above my eyebrows. I'm going to sweep my eyebrows from center to the temples with some good pressure. See, look at me first. Then you go behind the ears, the neck, the shoulders, the arms, the elbows, and the front of the hand. That technique helps immediately calm down the vagal response. It takes you down to the green zone. I'm going to leave you with a link for that if you want to look at it later. Thank you so much for having me today. You will get this PowerPoint presentation with references. Let me show you really quick that you have lots of links, lots of things I wanted to talk to you about, including the books that I talked to you about, lots of cool videos that will inspire you and get you excited to learn more and enhance your toolbox for enhancing that first stage of treatment. And you might find these tool important in your work. Most of the tools that I use were to bring you from the dorsal vagal freeze fight flight response to the ventral vagal social engagement. And let me stop the share because I think now might be time for questions.
Thank you so much, Alejandra. Gracias para todo, por todo. You did a wonderful job, and I know there's so many more hours you can speak about this subject. So I'd like to welcome my esteemed colleague and program director, Sarah Pineda. She will be moderating this conference. Ms. Pineda is a licensed marriage and family therapist and has worked at El Centro de Amistad for 12 years. She's our program director currently for the Child and Family Service programs and our CalWorks program. Prior to joining the ECDA team, Ms. Pineda served as Director of Admissions at Pacific Youth Services for nearly 7 years. This program provided residential inpatient services to adolescent boys aged 12 to 18 who were under the supervision of the probation department or the Department of Child and Family Services. Sarah is an incredible mental health therapist and mentor. She is accredited and certified in several evidence-based practices as a trainer for DCFS RFA parenting training and is a domestic violence advocate. She holds a bachelor's degree from California State University Northridge and a master's degree from Phillips Graduate Institute, where she was a member of the Alpha Epsilon Lambda National Honor Society. Please welcome us in introducing Sarah. We'll have about 5 minutes for questions with Alejandra. Thank you, Sarah and Alejandra.
Good morning. Buenos días. Gracias, Alejandra.
Lazada.
Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation. I know it's directed towards children, but definitely helped us out and grounded us this morning, especially some of us that are here presenting today. So thank you so much for that. As far as questions, I'm looking to see if anybody has any questions on our chat. I don't see any, but I do have one for you. As clinicians, we sometimes think about sometimes the outlier. When you're talking about grounding techniques, sometimes we have situations where we have children or even adults that might be not too keen about the sensory part of what you're offering in your presentation. How do we know when a client is disassociating?
Oh, that's a big question. It requires a lot of that. Let me see. Well, one of the most noticeable symptoms is that they may look away. Like they might not be there, right? They're dissociating. And let me be clear with this one. Dissociation has helped them survive. And that's important that we don't over pathologize dissociation, because dissociating helped them survive when they were experiencing the big trauma. Ana Gomez uses, she loves metaphors, and I love metaphors and analogies. And dissociating is a defense. So if you lived in the North Pole, you needed a heavy jacket, boots, gloves, scarf, but now you are in California and it's 90 degrees outside. We need to learn, right? You're going to be really uncomfortable if you keep that jacket on. So our job as therapists is little by little, help them not get rid of the jacket, but learn how to put different ones depending on the weather. So time orientation techniques will be really useful for dissociation. And a little bit of psychoeducation. There's a wonderful book by Ana Gomez that explains dissociation for children. I cannot recall, but if you Google Ana Gomez and her books, there's one specifically it's all colors of me, if I believe. It really helps explain children what is happening to you, and almost honoring that it helped you survive in a way.
Thank you so much for that. That's something that, as I was listening to your presentation, I'm sure I was wondering how, that's something that some of our clinicians or even, anybody that works with children might be thinking. Children are a little bit more difficult to engage sometimes. So thank you for that. I'm looking to see if anybody else has any questions, but I have another one for you. You talked about affect tolerance. And how is that different from affect regulation?
Affect tolerance, affect regulation. They go hand in hand. So one is learning, expanding the vocabulary. And therapists were really good at that, like name feelings, identifying different feelings. Kids who've been especially exposed to, they've been abused, they might misread cues. Like if you're like right now, the way you are, you look serious, but they might think you're angry.
Right.
And so we can show, and now with actually doing work on online, I've been asking clients, find me I show them some images from on share screen on Zoom, and I ask them, what do you think this guy is feeling? What do you think she's feeling? And we'll learn about identifying properly, but naming feelings, but especially learning that every feeling has a purpose. They're not bad. They might not be so pleasant, but they're not bad or good. They just are, and they have a purpose. So learning about feelings, but also learning to tolerate them. We could have like a whole hour,
with that,
a whole semester talk about different tools to, like, as if you were opening a door. How much do you want to, using Ana Gomez uses measuring cups from the kitchen. How much do you want to talk about sadness today? The little one, the big one, the small one, things that you may have at home. Opening a door. How much do you want to see sadness today? A little bit, a lot.
Well, thank you for that. I think we have to welcome our next presenter, but thank you so much, Alejandra. It was wonderful to hear your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, I'm Senator Alex Padilla. Thank you for inviting me to join you for Mental Health Awareness Month. I want to thank El Centro de Amistad for providing critical mental health resources and support to the San Fernando Valley community. Access to mental health care empowers young people and working families. I also want to thank all the mental health professionals. You do essential work every day to destigmatize mental illness and to support and serve those in need. The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to so many. Families around the country have faced tremendous uncertainty this past year. Some lost their sense of security as they struggled to find work, pay rent, and feed their families. Others were forced to say goodbye to loved ones by phone or a video screen and grieve without the comfort of their communities. The need for mental health services has strained providers at every level, and still more need is unmet, especially in communities where therapy is an unfamiliar or stigmatized topic. As we begin our recovery from the pandemic, we must recognize and meet the urgent demand for mental health care. As one of my first acts as senator, I was proud to vote for the American Rescue Plan, which provides $4 billion to increase equitable access to mental health care. That money includes funding for substance abuse treatment, community-based clinics, and tribal initiatives. Critically, it also includes $140 million to support providers' mental health and help prevent burnout. Each of you has experienced the toll of the pandemic alongside your patients, and you too deserve support. I'm so thankful for the critical work that you do. So please hang in there, and please continue to stay safe.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you, Senator Padilla, for that wonderful presentation. As you all may know, Senator Padilla was born and raised in Pacoima, so he has a personal connection to the San Fernando Valley. Thank you also to Sarah and Alejandra for the Q&A and to Alejandra for the presentation. Our second presenter is coming up right now. Her name is Daisy Rosales. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist and a clinical supervisor at El Centro de Amistad under the Family Preservation Program. Daisy earned her bachelor's degree from California State University, Northridge, and her master's degree in marriage family therapist at Phillips Graduate Institute. Ms. Rosales has worked at El Centro de Amistad for 6 years. She worked initially as a mental health clinician and now is part of ECDA's management team. She enjoys working with underprivileged communities and families. She is trained in several evidence-based practices, including TFCBT, CBT, and seeking safety, and has an expertise in working with clients who have experienced trauma, anxiety, depression, high-risk issues, relational difficulties, and challenging life transitions. Through her own personal lived experience and growing up in the same community in which we provide services, she's able to relate and connect with others in an impactful and helpful way, which has made her work more fulfilling and rewarding. Daisy will be presenting today on suicidality and adolescence with cultural considerations, interventions and treatment, and crisis and safety planning. This is a very sensitive topic, so if you need time to regroup, please give that to yourself. Please join me in welcoming Daisy Rosales. Thank you, Daisy, for taking the time to present today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Tanya. I appreciate it. And thank you, Alejandra, for that wonderful presentation as well. And I will go ahead and share my screen now. So give me one moment. Okay. Just want to make sure you all can see my presentation. Can somebody confirm? No? Okay, give me one moment. All right, there we go. Thank you so much. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. And I will be talking about suicidality and adolescence. So as we already know, this is a very sensitive topic, and but definitely is something that we definitely want to be able to talk about, especially during these times of COVID and post-COVID pandemic is something that's really important to be able to talk about. So thank you so much for joining us. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about a difficult topic today. So death by suicide, what is it? So suicide is death caused by injuring oneself with the intent to die. And a suicide attempt is when someone harms themselves with the intent to end their life, but they do not die as a result of their actions. And suicidal ideation refers to thinking about, considering, or planning suicide. And the reason why it's important to really consider the difference between these is because sometimes clients or patients may throw around these concepts, right? As to like, I want to attempt suicide, or I have thoughts of killing myself, right? And we want to be able to identify what it is that they're feeling, what it is that they're thinking about, and be able to pinpoint what is the best way to help them. So what are some of the warning signs for adolescents? We want to really think about what are some of the things that come up with any clients or any of our children as well. We want to be able to recognize what it is that they're going through in order to know when we need to check in. Personality change, withdrawal, substance abuse, reckless behavior, changes in sleep. So making sure that they are being able to sleep well, neglect in personal appearance, physical pain, and really kind of like, I think the biggest one that I would really recommend really checking in with is hopelessness about the future. What is your adolescent really dealing with? Sometimes I think like really listening to the words that they're using. Are they really seeing that there's no hope for the future? Nothing's going to get better. Same thing with sudden mood changes. Are they constantly like angry or all of a sudden angry or withdrawing from their family, from their friends, something that they're really enjoying? Are they in sports and really just not wanting to engage anymore? So those are some of the major warning signs that we want to look out for. So some statistics and facts that we want to consider are, in the United States, suicide is the second leading cause of death among 15 to 19-year-olds in that age range. Prevalence rates of suicide attempts are higher among females versus males, but males are more likely to die by suicide. And the reason being that they tend to use more lethal means of suicide. Students who are identified as being gay, lesbian, or bisexual in comparisons to students who identified as heterosexual tend to have a higher prevalence rate of suicide, and those in the African American ethnic group as well. Some of the methods of suicide are firearms, which are the leading suicide method among U.S. youth, and it's also followed by hanging and suffocation, as well as self-poisoning. And self-poisoning is more like taking pills and taking a large amount of pills to poison themselves. So in looking at the suicide rates for adolescents, and this is data or preliminary data for 2020, we can actually see a map of the United States on the left side. And we can actually see that at least in California, right? There's about 9 in 100,000 adolescents ages 15 to 19 died by suicide. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but you're talking about about 9 in 100,000, and that's in the whole population. So when you really think about the whole country, I mean, that's quite a bit of adolescents, and it's a pretty alarming rate. And here we can actually see the suicide rates for adolescents by gender and race as well. So in females, we can definitely see it's about 5 in 100,000, and that's in ages 15 to 19. And in males, it's about 16. So that's about triple the amount of females. And on the right side, we're able to see that American Indian and Alaskan Natives are the highest risk and tend to die by suicide a lot more than other ethnicities, and then followed by Caucasian, Asian, Hispanic, and then African American. Some of the cultural considerations that we want to take in treatment are the language barriers. So one of the things that we want to really think about is, are they receiving services or are they available even in their language? Sometimes clients aren't able to access services in their own language. And that's something that kind of drives them away from even seeking. Sometimes if they just came from another country, they may not know how to even access those services. And that's where outreach is really important for us as providers. There's also the distrust of providers and the stigma in seeking help. As we already know, there's a lot of stigma with different ethnicities and different cultural beliefs, right? Of like distrusting providers, like we don't trust other people, and we keep these issues kind of like within ourselves. So that's one of the biggest things that also comes with seeking treatment. And also the belief in alternative medicine. So sometimes not really seeking mental health services, but really kind of thinking about it as, hey, let's look into our faith community, or maybe like we know a healer that can help us, and keeping it really within the family or within their own community that they know. So those are some of the things that we want to consider, and we want to be sensitive to that as well with our clients when working with them. So some of the differences among cultures. So in the Latino community, we know that females can be a little bit more expressive in the way that they express their feelings. They tend to be able to show their emotions a little bit more, while males have a little bit more difficulty doing that. And when they do so, they tend to be a little bit more aggressive, kind of a little generalizing there, right? But it tends to come out that way a lot more, and they tend to be a little bit more acceptable in those behaviors. So also kind of known as machismo. And there's also a high stigma in seeking mental health services. So yo no estoy loco, I'm not crazy. You know, the psychologist or the therapist is crazier than I am. Like, I'm not going to go see them. And so I think that that's something that really comes up in the Latino community. Immigration and acculturation issues. This is something that could be a really big one when it comes to adolescent suicide. The adolescents tend to grow up here in America while their parents are still trying to get accustomed to our culture here. And so that could lead to conflicts within family systems and trying to really help them get to the same norms and values as well. And something else to really kind of consider is familismo and familism. With the Latino community, there's a large influence in regards to a sense of family. It really influences the sense of individual identity, but there's a very big emphasis on family unity. We do things as a family, we respect our parents, and we respect our elders. So that's something that really tends to come up a lot with this particular community. In the African American community, there's a lot of racism and discrimination, as we already know. And that really is associated with a lot of depression, increased substance use, and hopelessness among African American adolescents. There's also a lot of social and economic inequities among this population. And there's a lot less opportunities for education and employment as well, which can also contribute to suicidality in adolescents. We also know that there's a lot more violence in the communities in which they live in, and there's a lot less community and family support. So these are some things that we want to consider when working with this population. And in the Asian American community, so there's a lot of discrimination as well, and there's acculturation issues, which are risk factors. They are much less likely to utilize mental health services in the Caucasian community. And I think that that's also part of kind of like what we were talking about with the Latino community as well. There's a lot of stigma and shame in being able to access services. They tend to also focus a lot in the family relationships, but there's also a lot of conflict as well in the family relationships. There's also a high focus and pressure to academically perform. So there's also that, and that can also lead to a lot of the suicidality and kind of wanting to make the family happy and be on par as to like the expectations for the community. So in really thinking about treatment interventions and what we want to work on with adolescents and whatnot, we want to really be able to engage the family in treatment. So one of the biggest themes that I have found in working with this population in adolescents is really engaging the family. As counterintuitive as that sounds, right? Like the adolescents don't really want to be involved with their family. They don't want to have anything to do with the parents sometimes at that age because they want to be independent. It's also very important. They need to be able to ensure there's a safe environment for their adolescent, and they have to monitor for safety in the home. They also may be able to help in resolving family conflicts. So you want to be able to engage the family in being able to help them resolve their differences and help them communicate a little bit better. There's also psychotropic medication. So this is a medication that they can, definitely see their psychiatrist for. not that medication is going to stop the suicidal ideation. However, it could help with addressing any of like the underlying depression, anxiety, or underlying issues that may be leading to having suicidal ideation. So it may be able to help with those things. There's also dialectical behavioral therapy, and you've probably heard of that before, but this one actually focuses on adolescents. So being able to help them on these 4 core areas. So building their mindfulness practices, interpersonal effectiveness, emotional regulation, and distress tolerance. And basically what those concepts are is being able to help your client or the adolescent being present in the moment, learning a little bit about how to do like deep breathing, how to live in the moment versus, thinking necessarily about the future and what's coming. Being able to set limits with others, setting boundaries, being able to recognize their feelings and how to sit with their feelings, the uncomfortable ones especially, and being able to cope with stressful events. So being able to help them really cope with those events that maybe they can't control. How can they cope with them and manage them, being able to move forward. There's also attachment-based family therapy. So as you can see, family, including the family is very important when it comes to suicidality in adolescents. They tend to, at least in this particular modality, they tend to include the family initially in order to help them build the connection with the adolescent. And then at some point, it switches over to building autonomy individually with the adolescent. So it initially starts with the connection with the parent, and then it moves on to being a little bit more independent from the parent. There's also the family intervention for suicide prevention, and this is a brief intervention. It's more usually used in emergency departments. There's a collaboration between parents and adolescents as well. So as you can see, this is kind of like a theme that continues to come up. And they conduct a crisis therapy session before discharge, which actually helps them be able to safety plan, develop skills for decreasing suicidal behavior, so helping them develop any like coping skills. And then it helps them have any like linkage after discharge to motivate, support, and ensure continuity of care. So one of the things that we want to make sure as providers is that our clients have that continuity of care and that we don't just discharge and we don't know what happened to this client. Something that's very, very important. And then there's Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale, which is the CSSRS. And this is actually a tool that assesses for severity of suicidality. And it actually assesses in 3 areas, which is the suicidal ideation, intensity of ideation, and the suicidal behavior. And here's a little bit of an example as to kind of what the tool looks like. This is not the whole tool. It's actually a kind of a lengthy tool, but it's a very good one where it's very specific. It really asks some questions that sometimes I think people are afraid to ask, like, do you wish to be dead, right? Have you thought about being dead? Would you like to be dead? And I think that sometimes we tend to kind of tiptoe around that and say, like, do you want to hurt yourself? And that can mean a lot of different things. So I think this tool is really helpful in really being able to ask the difficult questions in order to get a very thorough assessment. And you can actually find it online. You don't have to have any formal training for it, but you definitely should get acquainted with it before using it. So in talking about crisis and safety planning, so these are some important things to kind of keep in mind when you are getting ready to safety plan. So again, engaging the family in the safety planning process. You want to make sure that the family is on board in monitoring and helping the child or the adolescent stay safe. You want to help in reducing the family conflict. So a lot of the times, the things that are going on in the home are causing the suicidal ideation. So making sure that you facilitate the communication a little bit more and help the family work through that. And discussing the importance with the family of taking suicidal thoughts expressed seriously. So making sure that they don't minimize. Sometimes we hear from parents like, oh, they're just looking for attention. They're just, they're just teenagers, that they're not being serious. So making sure that they're not minimizing what they're saying. And making sure that we provide the psychoeducation to not only the adolescent, but to the parent as well, that there is an end to the feeling and crisis. So kind of like what Alejandra said, this too shall pass. There is that end to the situation. And providing coping skills training. So anything that as a clinician, mindfulness, deep breathing, grounding. So anything that we know, we definitely want to let them know and train them and show them anything, because what works for one client may not work for the other. And increasing sessions. So we want to make sure that we increase sessions to 2 times per week or as needed. So definitely doing check-ins in between sessions. How are things going? Is there anything that's needed? But definitely increasing sessions is a must. And making sure that you don't complete a suicide contract. So as we already know, suicide contracts are not effective and are a liability to us as professionals. So creating a document that's like, I will not hurt myself, and having the client sign it is not going to protect you or the client. They're not effective and they're not going to do anything. So we want to make sure that we do something a little bit more thorough and helping the client in safety planning. And last but not least in here is documenting, making sure we document everything, not only for ourselves, but also for the client, and making sure that we're doing everything that we can to assist the client in remaining safe. Again, as providers, we already know if we don't document, it didn't happen. So in the continuation of safety planning, when we're talking about a detailed written plan, that's definitely a must. Now, right now with virtual, it's a little bit of a challenge, but we do our best, and I'll get to that a little bit ahead. But definitely one of the things that we want to put is the warning signs and behaviors which cause concern. So what are the triggers? What are some of the things that are happening with the adolescent that can cause the suicidal ideation or the suicidal thoughts to come up? We want to list the diversion techniques or coping skills that can be used. Like, what are some activities that they could engage in? What are some coping skills that they can use? What are some phone numbers of people that they can call during crisis? So you definitely don't want to have them name their arch enemy in high school, right? Because they're not going to call them. You want to make sure that they have, maybe like a best friend, somebody that they can trust, an adult, someone who they can really feel comfortable with calling when something is happening. And you want to list the steps to removing access to lethal means. So if there's any weapons in the home, if they already said, well, I already know where my mom keeps the medication, and I already know that when I feel suicidal, I can go and get it and drink all the pills. We want to make sure we remove that access and list the steps to removing that access. And you want to list the mental health professionals that could be contacted. And something that I found really important to be a part of a safety plan is describing the motivations and reasons to stay alive. I've noticed that if this is listed, they kind of tend to really think about kind of what they're doing, because in the time of crisis, they don't really think about like, hey, why am I here? What can I look forward to? What is important to me? So I think writing it in advance is something that's really important. And including local emergency numbers. So 911, the hospital, the local police station. I mean, just like any local emergency numbers. Even 911, because even though it seems like common sense, sometimes I think when we're under crisis, we may not remember. And any hotline numbers that they can contact in between sessions, when they might feel like they're in crisis, in case you don't answer or they miss a phone call. And clients should complete in their own writing It's really important because I think it gives them more of a commitment, I think, to themselves if they write it. Right now, it's a little bit more difficult virtually, so we do what we can right now, but when in person, definitely the client should complete in their own writing. Okay. So we're going to watch this very short video, which I think gives us a little bit of a glimpse as to adolescents and kind of like what they feel. And sometimes I think it can provide us a little bit of an insight from their perspective.
I have my ups and downs, just like anybody else.
Maybe more than anybody else.
I can be hard to figure out.
And I like my privacy. I don't want you looking over my shoulder all the time.
But you know your kid better than anybody else. And if you think he's acting different than usual,
Acting really down, crying all the time for no good reason.
or getting really mad, not able to sleep, or sleeping too much,
Shutting her friends out or giving her stuff away.
acting reckless, drinking, using drugs, staying out late,
Suddenly not doing stuff he used to love.
or doing stuff that's just not like him.
It might be nothing to worry about. It might just be high school.
Or it might be something more. He might be depressed. Not just feeling down, really depressed.
It might be that your kid is thinking about killing himself. It happens. More than you think. More than it should.
And people say, I had no idea.
I thought it was just a phase he was going through.
I never thought she'd do it.
I wish he'd come to
I
me.
wish he'd said
I
something.
wish I'd said something.
When it's too late. So if you think your kid's acting different, if she seems like a different person, say something.
Say, what's wrong? How can I help?
And ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself? It doesn't hurt to ask. In fact, it helps.
When people are thinking about killing themselves, they want somebody to ask. They want somebody to care.
Maybe you're afraid you'll make it worse if you ask. Like, you'll put the idea in their head.
Believe me, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't hurt to ask. In fact, the best way to keep a teenager from killing herself is to ask. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
And what if they say yes?
Or maybe.
Or sometimes,
Well, here's what you don't say.
that's crazy.
Don't be such a drama
You're
queen.
making too much of this.
That boy's not worth killing yourself over. It's not going to solve anything.
You're just trying to get attention.
You're not going to kill yourself. What you do say is,
I'm sorry you're feeling so bad. How can I help? We'll get through this together.
Let's keep you safe.
a lot of people think about killing themselves, adults and kids. Most of them never tried, but some of them do. So if your kid says,
I'd be better off dead. I can't live with this.
I'm gonna kill myself, take her seriously. Or find someone she can talk to about it. Someone who knows how to help.
Sometimes kids want to kill themselves because something happened. A breakup, a failure. But sometimes it goes deeper, and it's not going to go away by itself. Get some help. Talk to your doctor.
Or a counselor at school.
Or your minister.
But don't just let it drop.
And make sure that your kid always has someone to turn to. Someone he trusts. Make a list together, right then. 3, 4, 5 names.
Put a suicide hotline number on there too.
Have him keep that list in his wallet, so he always knows where to turn.
Be sure your home is safe. If you have pills she could use to hurt herself, lock them up.
If you have a gun, don't just lock it up. Get it out of the house. With bullets, too.
And one more thing. If you think your kid might be about to hurt himself, don't leave him alone.
Take him to the emergency room.
Call 911 if you have to.
We all have our ups and downs, but sometimes it's more than that.
If you think something's wrong, the only way to find out is to ask. Ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
Don't wait until you're sure. Trust your gut, because it never hurts to ask.
And it can make a big difference. All the difference. In your kid's life.
Well, thank you for watching that video. I know it could be a difficult video to watch, but I think it's a very important video and something that could be very helpful. Moving on to some resources. So as we already know, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is one that we have always seen. So the 1-800-273-8255 is a 24-hour hotline that's available to anyone in suicidal crisis. But I think when we're talking about suicidal adolescents, we want to think about they don't really like to talk. So texting is a really good alternative for them. So there's also the crisis text line, and they can text EMM to this number, and they can text confidentially with a trained crisis counselor for free 24/7. And there's also the LA County DMH Access Line, which is a good resource for providing referrals, screening, assessment, and crisis counseling. There's also the Trans Lifeline, which is a organization that is dedicated to improving trans lives by responding to the critical needs of the community, and is available at different times of the day, and it's run by volunteers. And there's also the Trevor Project, which is a leading national organization which provides crisis intervention and suicide prevention services to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning young people under 25. And they also have Trevor Text, which is available by texting START to that phone number. And we'll definitely send these out to everyone. And there's also the teen line online, and they can actually call, text, email, and there's also a message board that they can utilize with other teenagers and ask questions. And there's an actual like community and online support. So I thought this was a really great resource for teenagers. And again, I think really encouraging them to reach out, whatever way that is, if it's a phone number, but I think for them, something that's like texting would really work out for them, because that's just kind of like the era that we're in right now. And there's some references, and we will move on into Q&A. And but thank you so much to everybody for tuning in to the presentation. So we'll take a few minutes for any questions that anyone has.
Hi, Daisy. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I know it's a very sensitive subject, and it's not something that, people in general like to talk about, but it's so very important, especially now with the pandemic. We've seen with teenagers a high rise in incidence of suicidality amongst the youth. And we have one question in our comment section. Someone's asking, what advice would you give someone that has an adult friend or relative that's expressing suicidal ideation?
Well, I think it really just kind of depends on kind of like the relationship that they have with that person. It would really depend on how close they are to this person and how ready that person is to receive that information. Sometimes if they are close to that person, they are ready to receive, resources and referrals and things like that. And kind of like where they are in their process. But sometimes they're not. So I think it's really being able to evaluate how close is a relationship and how confident or able are you to help that person. And because I think the other thing we want to think about is, I know that sometimes we worry about wanting to help another person and worrying that they're going to get upset with us. And, if we refer them somewhere or we give them information, but I think we also have to think about, I personally would rather have them be upset at me for giving them the information than having something happen. So I think just really being able to share with them that we care about them, and that this is why we're sharing that information. That's why we want them to get help, that they can count on us for any assistance to keep them safe. So that's what I would say.
Okay, we have another question. So what advice would you have for adolescents who express suicidal ideation to their peers and tell them not to say anything to their parents or their family, which is something that does occur at times?
Definitely. I mean, I think, and that has happened before, in the clients that I've worked with before, they tend to trust their peers a lot. And it is really hard. I do try to tell them, like, hey, I know that you trust your friends and they are a support system for you. But I think also in having clients kind of be that holding space for them. We also want to, I think our as professionals and as adults, we want to make sure that their safety, is of utmost importance. So making sure that they're safe, we want to let them know that they can count on us. We want to make sure that, I think as clinicians, one of the biggest things that we go through is kind of like that, we don't want to break their trust,
Right.
but at the same time, we want to keep them safe. So I think kind of like the same concept as to like, well, we want to be able to have you trust us, but we want to keep you safe, and kind of like that same concept with the teens. And
Okay.
helping their friends.
Thank you for that. Another question, let me see if we have any further questions. I have a few questions of my own. Is cutting or self-harm considered suicidal ideation or attempts?
Not necessarily. So there's also non-suicidal self-harm or self-injury. So I think really kind of working with your client and really asking, kind of like what the video said, right? Really asking straight out, do you want to kill yourself? Because sometimes in my experience in working with clients is they don't want to kill themselves. They just want to get rid of the pain, right? Of the emotional pain, and they want to divert their pain to something more physical. So sometimes it's not necessarily that they want to end their lives. They just want to divert their emotional pain to a more physical pain.
Mm-hmm. And I truly, appreciate the emphasis that you put on asking direct questions in terms of, suicidality. A lot of times, even as professionals, we tend to feel a little eerie about asking a direct question, but in reality, as the kids, stated in the video, it's not that you're going to implant a thought. That thought is already there. The direct question actually helps and puts them at ease that someone is actually, addressing the issue that's been lingering in their mind for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I have another question. Teenagers, just working with teenagers for a long, long time, their behaviors are erratic at times, just because that's the stage of life that they're in. What or how can we differentiate between something that is a normal teenage behavior to, one of those warning signs that you were talking about in your presentation?
Well, I think that's where, as parents, we have to also be able to pay attention. And even though some of the things that happen with adolescents, children, and even adults, we are able to tell like when there's sudden changes and really like, like really sudden changes in the behavior. So maybe like sometimes they tend to be kind of like to themselves and everything, but they still kind of go out with their friends. But all of a sudden, they don't want to do anything. They don't want to talk to anybody. They don't want to engage with anyone. So really paying attention to more sudden, extreme changes in kind of like their behavior. And that's where really trying to keep an open communication with your adolescents is really important, I think. And kind of keeping that open line of communication is really helpful, because when changes like that happen, they tend to be a little bit more trusting of you as an adult to kind of come and tell you and say, hey, this is what I'm going through and whatnot. It doesn't always happen, but definitely kind of trying to be a little bit more involved in kind of like what they're doing, especially now with social media and having access to so many different things, definitely being a little bit more involved in what they're doing.
I agree. Thank you for that. And also, is comorbidity a factor in the risk assessment of the youth and suicidality?
Yes, definitely. So we want to think about sometimes there's already like depression and anxieties as underlying factors. We also want to think about like the predisposition, I think, hereditary stuff as well that are already kind of there and just, that are kind of, they're already predisposed. So they're definitely, the comorbidity is a big factor as well that we want to kind of like really think about, and is a big contributing factor to suicidality for adolescents and adults as well.
Right. And so going along with the comorbidity, it's also, there's that substance abuse piece, with that, and someone's asking, how does substance abuse affect suicidality, which is kind of alluding to the same thing, with the comorbidity.
Yes, no, definitely. When you're talking about substance abuse, we want to really think about also, like, is that also affecting even more like the depression, or is it like the depression leading more to more substance abuse and all of that? So we don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, but I think definitely those come hand in hand a lot of the time.
Well, thank you so much, Daisy, for addressing such a sensitive topic and being with us here today. Definitely, if you have any more questions, you can put them in the chat and we'll try to address them. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much to everyone. And if there's any further questions, we can definitely address them. Thank you.
Hello, welcome back, everybody. We are going to start with our final presenter here, our last and final presenter. Oh, I'm sorry. Jacob Vargas, our celebrity, is a celebrity from the community, is going to do a video presentation for El Centro de Amistad. So please watch the video.
Jacob Vargas here. Hope you're all doing well. I want to talk to you today about a subject that unfortunately as a community we don't discuss very much, and that is mental health. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and this is a good time for us to check in on our loved ones, our family members, our parents, our kids, and just see if they're okay. And if they're not okay, maybe we can help them find the help they need. We've gone through a lot this last year, and this year we're coming out of this pandemic and things are slowly getting back to normal. But I do fear that we have yet to see the full effects of this pandemic. We yet to see the full effects of the loneliness, the isolation, the fear, the uncertainty. And I fear for our emotional and mental well-being. And so if you live in the San Fernando Valley, there is a great organization called El Centro de Amistad, and their website is ecda.org, and they are a great organization. They offer a lot of resources to help you and your family. You can also reach them on their phone at 818-898-0223, because we shouldn't have to suffer alone, and it's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to ask for help. So let's take care of each other and be well.
Thank you, Jacob, for that wonderful presentation. So right now we're going into our last presenter, Michael Mikulski. Michael is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he is the director of the MFT training at Pacific Clinics at the Foothill site, a clinical supervisor, and is in private practice at the Feeling Good Institute. In 2001, Michael began his career in community mental health as an outreach coordinator at Angel's Flight, which is a shelter for runaway children. Angel's Flight serves high-risk youth in the Los Angeles and East Los Angeles area. He is a graduate of Fuller Theological Seminary and provided therapeutic services to clients at the Asian American Christian Counseling Center from 2003 to 2020. Michael has a passion for helping clients achieve health and well-being and for staff to achieve their fullest potential. Please welcome Michael as he presents an overview of treatment considerations for treating people with bipolar disorder, including differential diagnosis, cultural considerations, tools, and interventions to engage patients and family members. Welcome, Michael, to our conference, and thank you.
Thank you, Tanya, so much for that introduction. Let me pull up my PowerPoint here. Okay, that didn't work. Might need some help here. Pulling up my PowerPoint. Let's see. Somehow I'm not able to pull it up. Share button. Okay, I see the share button, but it doesn't give me the option for my screen. Okay. I think I got it. Okay. I don't see anybody, but is that working? No, you can't see my PowerPoint? Presentation mode. Let me start the slideshow. Okay, I don't know if you could see this or not. I'm gonna call Beth. My apologies. Oh, you could see it. No, you can't. Okay. Unfortunately, I did update my slides. Okay, I'm going to keep trying here. And tell me if you could see it. I don't know what presentation mode is. Oh, I think I got it. Reuse slides. No. Okay, is the presentation started? All right. It's a little embarrassing I can't get this to start. Can I have Beth, you call me, please? Okay, is this working now? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Hello. I'm Michael Mikulski, licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm very excited to share with you this training on bipolar disorder. This is an overview. It doesn't cover everything about bipolar disorder, but there are some important tools I've learned along the way, and perhaps you use some of these, but I hope this will be helpful for you. In the beginning, when I graduated with my MFT degree, the truth is I didn't know what to do when I came across bipolar disorder. One of my earliest cases after I graduated was an 8-year-old girl. I was called to work with her. She was very sad in class. And her grades were going down a little bit, but she was doing all right. And I met with her, and my mental status exam saw that she seemed to be doing okay, but was a little down. And in talking with her, I learned that her mother had some problems. And in fact, her mother had bipolar disorder, but the family didn't know what to do about it. In this case, their mother would get these large pots, fill them with water and boil them all night long, and put household items into the boiling pots of water. And I figured this was bipolar disorder, but I still didn't know what to do for the family other than refer her to a psychiatrist. And they didn't have insurance, so they used to go to Mexico to go to doctors, but also curanderos, and try to find cures. And sometimes those worked. And that's how they were kind of dealing with bipolar disorder for years. Another case, my first year as an MFT was with a 12-year-old male of mixed race. And they lived in apartment buildings, and his mother was known as the lady who runs around naked. Obviously with a major manic episode. So I'm describing some manic episodes here. And it's hard for most people to understand mania until you come face to face with it. And I'm hoping to convey what that's really like in this first part of this presentation. My sister-in-law, there she is, Vicky, has bipolar disorder. And her first episode was in the year 2000. And you could see here a very busy street in Taiwan. And her first episode, she was about 30 years old. And she began kissing all the people in the restaurant she was managing and telling them she loved them, which is very unusual for Vicky, who's very shy. And then she ran out into a very busy street without any regard to her own safety. And it alarmed people so much that several men held her down for her own safety until the ambulance came. That was her first episode at the age of 30. She came to visit us in America in Pasadena in 2004. And I'd like to begin this first part of this presentation with this story because this woke me up. Even though I had those other clients who had bipolar disorder, I simply referred them to the psychiatrist, and I didn't know what I could do for the family. Well, when Vicky was staying with us, she started off doing well. She was taking English classes. She was going to stay with us for 6 months. And she showed us this big bag of pills, lithium pills, when she started to unpack her things. And my first mistake was thinking that's totally her business, whether she takes her medicine or not. And it's true, but there are some things family can do, which we're going to get into in a little bit. Well, Vicky started to have warning signs that I did not understand. She started to speak out in Bible study with my wife. It was all in Mandarin, Chinese, and that's unusual for her. But I didn't understand this was a warning sign of an impending manic episode. The next week, she started to shout really weird things in the class, and I still didn't pick it up. I was just wondering, why is she shouting really weird things in Bible study. And then my wife tells me that she's staying up all night, night after night, wandering around our tiny little apartment in Pasadena. And I was wondering, well, why is she staying up all night? I thought maybe it was jet lag. But she wasn't sleeping in the day either. And she gave me permission to share this story. At one point, I was watching TV and she came over and kissed me on the lips. And I turned around to my wife and said, well, what's going on? And my wife looked at me in horror and said, my sister-in-law thinks she's my wife and my wife is the sister-in-law. Then Vicky went to the front door and opened it and closed it and opened it and closed it in this crazed look on her face. And at that point, I realized that there was something wrong, right? I had never seen a manic episode up front. And it's different from normal mood swings. And this is what people get very confused when they're diagnosing bipolar disorder. It is really unusual and can be life-threatening. In this case, what I did, it's a long story, but we ended up taking her to Huntington Memorial Hospital, where she stayed for 2 weeks. And she didn't recognize my wife for a full week on medication. And she finally started to talk again. And we put her on the first plane back to Taiwan to get back to her psychiatrist. And this was the trigger for me to start learning about bipolar disorder in detail. What is it and what can we do as clinicians? And in my study, I learned to make it systemic, to have an outline or a list of what you want to accomplish when you're working with a family or the client who has bipolar disorder, and you want a really good assessment and history. And it's helpful if you could get information from the family, because Vicky doesn't remember any of her manic episodes. But she's treatment compliant. She's taking her medication. She's read some books on bipolar disorder, and she learned about it. So we want an excellent assessment, looking at substance abuse. Vicky doesn't take drugs or alcohol. We want to look at suicide and of course, refer for a full physical to see if anything else is going on. The next thing we want to do, and I'm going to kind of pull these out a little bit in this presentation, is we want to do a great psychoeducation of bipolar disorder for the client and significant others. We really want a clear idea of what it is and what it's not. We want to do a great job with stress management. And a really important part is relapse prevention and identifying warning signs, which we're going to go into detail. The last speaker talked about warning signs for suicidal risk. There are warning signs for bipolar disorder, in particular for major depression and manic episodes. We also have a role as therapists in building supports for the people, building their activities and a balance in life. And we want to use a client-centered approach. We don't want to run the client's life for them. We want them to understand their bipolar disorder and sort of guide us in organizing their life so that we have some really great things in place. I wish I could see you all so I can get in the moment questions, but I'll just keep going here. One of the things that I do is I use a whiteboard, and I've also done this through telehealth using a piece of paper. And this is assessment and psychoeducation at the same time. The reason I use a whiteboard or a piece of paper to do this is because there's often lots of problems happening and sometimes lots of chaos. And I want to focus the client and the family on this part. And what I do is I draw a line across the middle of the page, like you could see here. And that's, I call our neutral mood over time. Of course, we don't have neutral moods, but I just kind of mention that. And then I draw a squiggly line up above the neutral mood and down below. And I explain to the client and the families that this is normal. We all have normal positive moods, and we all have normal negative moods. There's a certain normal range that we all go through. All things being equal, we usually have a little bit above the neutral line. We have enough energy to get up and shower, get dressed, eat breakfast, talk to our family, maybe even hear the birds singing outside, and get on with our day. That would be sort of our normal mood. But we have sad days, we have disappointments, we have difficulty pulling up the PowerPoint, for this presentation. That was a little stressful. So that would be a negative mood, but popped out of it, right? So we go up and down, and that's kind of normal. That's not bipolar disorder. Everybody has, if you will, some mood swings in the normal range. What I do is I draw a line really far down, and I talk about depression. And I ask the client or family member, have you ever felt depressed, or has your family member felt depressed, and what was that like? And I use their words, and I write it down. They might say, well, I have unclear thinking, and nothing makes sense, and I just stare out the window. And I write their words down, and I'm going to apply that, if it fits, to the DSM-5. Usually they'll also say something like, I can't get out of bed. I have no motivation to do things. I'm very depressed. Or I think of suicide or death. So I write those down so that I can get an understanding of, have they had a depressive episode or not in their life? And I use their words. And what I'm doing here is I'm either confirming or disproving that they have bipolar disorder, depending on what they tell me. So this is the psychoeducation and assessment phase. And I make it visible. As therapists, we're not really taught to make things visible, but sometimes I find it really important to draw things out. It focuses the attention. I can gather some great information. So if you're a little shy of using a whiteboard or a diagram, you might want to give it a try. I find this tool really helpful. And then conversely, I draw a line all the way to the top, and that's mania, because bipolar is two poles, right? A manic episode and a depressive episode. Now, the manic episode, I circled it in red here, because this is the main criteria for a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. They have to have met criteria for a manic episode. Again, I want to get the client's words. What I explained is, sometimes in life, we all feel pretty good. It seems like the stars have all aligned for us. We have this sort of energy and vitality, not due to drugs or caffeine or anything. And then I ask people, how long does that stay in your mind? How long do you feel really good for? And it's usually just a few hours, maybe a day if you're lucky, when you feel sort of this extra good. And then we go down to baseline. But mania, they keep going up. The energy is just super, super high. Everything seems so easy. They stay up night after night and all through the day. This person, Kay Jamison, in her book Unquiet Mind, when she had a manic episode, she read everything that wasn't nailed down. The world was filled with pleasure and promise. She felt really great. Her mind seemed clear and fabulously focused in another number of other things. So sometimes we confuse bipolar disorder with the mood swings of teenagers or even adults. And we have to be really clear, is this a manic episode? And one of the main cues is that they're not sleeping or barely sleeping, and they have a ton of energy the next day. If most of us only sleep 3 hours at night, we're going to feel it the next day. But person with a manic episode they're going to be flying. They're not having a problem. Here's an example, a picture I took of actually doing this with a family, and I've done this in Chinese, having somebody translate for me, and also Spanish. And we looked at their depressive episodes and what that was like, and their manic episodes. This really paints a picture so that you can also differentiate, is this bipolar disorder or is there something else? I did this once with a person who was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and she didn't mention any depressive or manic episodes. It was about anxiety, but she had been misdiagnosed, quite possibly. Here are the common misdiagnoses for bipolar disorder. When a person has major depression and we fail to gather a complete history. Substance-induced mood disorder, right? So we always have to consider if they're active on medications, on drugs or medications. Borderline personality disorder. What's the difference? We're going to look at that in a little detail here. Schizoaffective disorder is can be bipolar type, but it also has schizophrenia, the symptoms associated with schizophrenia. Then ADHD can look very much like bipolar disorder, especially bipolar 2. So getting a really good history and knowing your bipolar disorder and what it is super helpful. Here's sort of a comparison page on bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. For bipolar, their mood swings are usually measured in days, like 5 days or weeks or even months. And then borderline is usually measured in hours, right? Maybe days, but it's usually very much within the day. Bipolar disorder, their mood swings are frequently not triggered by life events. They can be triggered by some stresses, but the difference is with a person with some features of borderline personality disorder, the mood swings are typically triggered by life events. Feeling very sensitive about slights or perceived abandonment. For bipolar, there's a family history of bipolar depression and major depression. For people with personality disorder, the family history is typically drug abuse, impulsivity, and depression. And then the manic, hypomanic episodes are characterized by classic symptoms of bipolar disorder. Whereas in borderline, mood swings are rarely characterized by decreased sleep, increased energy, and elation or grandiosity. So that's a good one to keep in mind. Another thing you can do, and I won't go into this very detail, but look at the DSM and compare whatever it is you might be comparing. In this case, for the borderline person with borderline, a pattern of unstable, intense interpersonal relationships is the key feature. For bipolar disorder, it might look like being more talkative. Another one, let's look at the third one, affective instability due to reactivity of mood for someone with borderline. And bipolar is more of a great increase of self-esteem and grandiosity. It's just different when you get to learn bipolar disorder in detail. And then what's similar is that they can seem kind of similar in these ways, and then different. One has to do with a lot of energy, and the other is perceived breaches in relationship, just to put it in a nutshell there. I really wish I had longer in this talk, but that'll give you an idea of how to do a good differential diagnosis. I also use the whiteboard to draw this image out. Bipolar disorder is episodic, so it has episodes. There's periods of stability. Whether the person's on medication or not, they could function pretty normally. And what you want to do is pay attention to warning signs. And what are that person's warning signs for an impending manic episode? And with Vicky's case, we've been able to catch the warning signs early and intervene so that, as you can see, she can come back up to stability quickly. So I think I have time for a story or two here. I would be listening. I would hear my wife talking to her sister on the phone. Her sister's in Taiwan, and they're talking in Chinese, and I don't understand Mandarin Chinese or Taiwanese, but they'd be talking, and I would notice a change in my wife's tone. And we would talk, and my wife would tell me that Vicky is talking weird. So when they say talking weird, that's sort of identifying possible warning signs, because it's a change from her behavior. And she would be staying up later and later and not going to sleep. So how we intervened, even though we were here in the United States, is we would ask her to go see her psychiatrist right away. And at first, she would delay this, but she got used to the idea of going right away, and the psychiatrist would adjust the medication, and we could avoid a full-blown manic episode. And we've actually avoided quite a few of those. What you're going to look for is sudden changes in their behavior. Their body language can become very stiff. They can start to try to accomplish much more than they would normally accomplish. Obviously, talking really fast is a big indicator. They show really heightened energy and a decreased need for any kind of sleep. And then cognitive, that they might actually think that they are really married to somebody they're not, or that they're close friends with a movie star or something like that when they're in their manic episode. And usually they feel very powerful and invincible. And we want to catch these things early so we can intervene. Once they're in a manic episode, it's very difficult, and we do want to bring them to the doctor, or they may need hospitalization. So one way I think about the warning signs is a personal signature. We all have our own signature. And I think of a warning signs as a person's own signature. So when I'm working with a client who has bipolar disorder, and we've done the diagram and they get it, they're like, yes, what can I do? We do a history and we look at what happened before their manic episode. What were the changes? And we identify a list. For example, here's a list of Vicky's warning signs. She's talking weird. She's not sleeping. She won't get out of bed. She has rigid body language. Hard to describe, but not relaxed, right? Something like kind of uptight, sort of. She seems to be in a rush all the time. For her, she's very shy, speaking out in public. That's very unusual for her and in her culture. And she says everything's okay, but she seems a bit off, right? So this is at the beginning of warning signs. We want to pay attention to that. What we want, if possible, is for families to be the eyes and ears for the client as well, because the client might like the sudden boost of energy. I know I would, and might ignore the warning signs. So what we want to do is work with the client and say, if you're beginning to have manic episodes, what do you want the family to do if they're noticing it? What do you want them to say? What do you want them to do? What do you want them not to say and not to do? It's really important that the client have a sense of control over their own life, even when they're beginning to have a manic episode. And that's what I meant by a client-centered treatment plan. It is when they're stable, we can have these conversations and the client could say, yes, when I'm beginning a manic episode, do this and don't do that. And, to help get the person to the doctor or nurse, or to get at least a med-eval or to decrease stress. Families are not prepared. That's a crucial role that we have as clinicians in working with not only the client, but families. Of course, we want to get a release, and we want to hear the families out, because sometimes they're burnt out, sometimes they're they're confused. Sometimes they blame themselves, and of course, it's not something to blame them. This is an actual article about my family. There's Vicky on the left, my son, her brother, my wife's brother, and then there's my wife with the dog. What happened, and you could see the fire. There was a fire in their apartment building. In this case, what happened was, this is what most likely happened, and that we all kind of think is that Vicky, they stay up late in Taiwan. I don't know if you know the culture, but they're always up very late. She was smoking in a massage chair, watching TV, and she took her medication, which makes her feel very sleepy, and she fell asleep while smoking. And then she went upstairs to bed, and then it caught on fire. And there's a long story, but they escaped onto a roof. It was very dangerous. People across the alley told them not to jump because they would have died, and they escaped. And I immediately knew. I was here in California, and I got a call from a doctor that said your wife and kids are okay, but your wife can't talk to you right now. Your kids are here, and you could see they were 2 and 4. So I got a leave of absence from work for a month so I can go take care of my wife in Taiwan. And I knew when I was flying there that this might cause Vicky to have a manic episode, to relapse, because stress, although it doesn't cause mania, can trigger a relapse. And sure enough, I noticed in the hospital those rigid body languages and her wanting to do tons of things. And I begged my wife to take her downstairs in that hospital where her psychiatrist happened to be to get an eval, and he did, and he agreed. She was about to have a manic episode, and he adjusted her meds, and she avoided a major manic episode there. So the fallout can be pretty big for families, and they may have had some horrible experiences. We love Vicky, she's great. There's no problems, but families may need your help, right? Talking about things and normalizing experiences. Here's a mini toolkit for mania or hypomania. You don't want to argue with somebody if they're, kind of manic or hypomanic. You want to encourage them to call the doctor. Hopefully you have a plan already agreed upon. You want to look at their sleep. Okay, what is happening in their stress? A number of things to do. I'm looking at the time, so I want to move a little bit here. You want to do a daily care chart. This is actually somebody I know's chart. I'm calling her Carol. She probably wouldn't mind if I used her real name. But you can see that she's charting every day her meds, whether she's taking it or not, her sleep, how many hours, her mood, right? From 0 to 10, maybe 8.5 was pretty good energy. Is she exercising? Her weight, cups of coffee? Okay, a number of things that you can just design your own daily care chart. And you can just search it on Google, because there's all kinds of mood charts that people can use and fill out. So they could create their own. A really important part of working with someone with bipolar disorder is that they totally understand their own moods and their own stress level and chart it out. Really is very helpful, and it's helpful for the family to get an idea of what is a baseline mood, when does it start to go off kilter, and how do you keep stress balanced as best as possible. How you speak to the person with bipolar disorder, you don't want to argue or yell at them, of course. I'm very curious, what were your reasons for stopping your medication, right? Non-intrusive, but, reminders. Here's another visual that I use, and I draw a line, and on the left I write denial, and on the right I write overprotection. And I do this non-judgmentally, and I invite the family members to come up and tell me, where are you? as far as her bipolar disorder? Are you feeling more denial, like it's not really true, she's faking it, or are we overprotecting? Do you think that just because your family member has bipolar disorder, she can't do anything? I had one family who were taking custody of her children, even though she was an adult and functioning pretty well because she had bipolar disorder. Well, that people with bipolar disorder, if they understand their illness and they're managing the illness, they could do just about anything. They could work full time and competitively. Vicky has her own condo in Taiwan. She owns and manages a restaurant. She's doing fantastic, and people can do that. And families will do this. They'll come up and they'll mark where they are. And I just talk about it with them. It's normal to feel overprotective. That's a sign of your love. And in fact, it's normal to feel denial. That's a sign of your love too. You want them to not have this difficult illness. I also do sort of and we're getting near the end here, an idea of how to deal with stress and support. And I put some books out and maybe a piece of cardboard on top, and I begin putting things in the middle of the cardboard to demonstrate stress, right? All of us have stress. We're working, we have deadlines, we have to give presentations on bipolar disorder. So we have normal stress. And what do we do when we have stress? So there's a couple of helpful things. We can have a reasonable number of tasks and therefore feel balanced. Sometimes we need to increase the support. So I show that by moving the books toward the center, and the number of tasks they're able to accomplish the same number of tasks because they're feeling support by family and friends. But if they're not able to get the support, they need to remove some tasks, right? So you and I, when we're very stressed, it's helpful to try not to accomplish so much, and then we can still kind of function pretty well. I hope that came across clearly. It's much better in a live demonstration. Bipolar is serious. It's the 6th leading cause of disability worldwide. There's an early onset, and it's chronic in nature. There's Kay Jamison, who wrote a great book. Life expectancy is less than people without severe mental disorder. From 4 to 20 years, they could die up to 20 years earlier, and that's usually from not managing the illness very well. Bipolar does not discriminate. It affects 2 to 4% of people all over the world. Doesn't matter the race or economic situation, but treatment rates are discriminatory. We want to make sure everybody's getting good treatment. And in particular, African Americans have reported significantly high rates of receiving a different diagnosis than bipolar disorder. For some reason, I'm not sure why. But we want to take in people's ethnicity, their culture, their background, and do a really good, clear assessment. And then there's my research content, and that's the end of my presentation.
Hi, thank you so much for that presentation. It was very interesting, and I really like the tools that you provided to us to continue to work with our clients. We have one more question. One question at a time is pretty short. What is the main cause of bipolar disorder? It's actually a multifaceted question. Are we born with it? Does it happen over time? And what causes it? And can we prevent it?
Okay, well, there's no definitive ruling on what causes bipolar disorder, but there does seem to be evidence for a genetic link, right? So that it's quite possible, part of our genetic background. It's not likely that it's caused by environment, but environmental stress can trigger, right? If a person's vulnerable to bipolar disorder, the environmental stressors can sort of bring it out and trigger an episode. but there's no definitive ruling about what exactly causes bipolar disorder, but it does seem to have a strong genetic link.
Great. Thank you so much for all that information. We've had a short time. We don't have any more time to continue having this very complex diagnosis and talking more about it. But thank you so much for being with us, and everyone, thank you so much for staying with us this long. And I think we're going to Tanya now. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for staying with us for these 2.5 hours. It's been a pleasure to have presented this information to everybody. I wanted to also thank our presenters, Alejandra Trujillo, Daisy Rosales, and Michael Mikulski, our moderator, Sarah Pineda, to our sponsors, the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health, the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, known as SAMHSA, Whole Foods, and to the California Community Center for their generosity and support. We thank you all. Also, we truly appreciate the support of Senator Alex Padilla, Assemblywoman Luz Rivas, and actor Jacob Vargas for sharing their support and their touching messages for the mental health community. A special thank you goes out to our El Centro de Amistad's Community Relations Coordinator, Flaviola Garcia, and Margaret Brown and Beth Hernandez Casey at socializela.com for putting this wonderful conference together. It was truly a labor of love. To our wonderful staff for providing excellent services to the families and individuals we serve in an effort to reduce mental health barriers, improve the quality of their lives, and to make their days more hopeful. To find out more about El Centro de Amistad, you please go to our website at www.ecga.org. And myself and the staff at El Centro de Amistad really thanks you for attending this virtual conference. Thank you.